After working hard at the gym, you need a mattress that works as hard as you do. Spinalign has engineered the perfect mattress for you and your active lifestyle. Don't compromise your recovery with inferior sleep. Order your Spinalign mattress today.
First pre-workout vape.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching a tasty pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your forum to ask anything, diet, training, supplementation, all things going on in and outside the bodybuilding world. It's now bringing Dave Palumbo. Dave, this past weekend, a very, very exciting edition of the New York Pro obviously moved to Tampa for obvious reasons. And earlier today, you had a chance to speak to the Classic Physique winner, Logan Franklin, got his first big win in Classic Physique, punched his ticket to the Olympia.
Yeah, I've known Logan. I think I did his first interview ever with him when he won the Nationals at the, I think it was in Miami in 2014, or I don't remember actually where it was, but I know I interviewed him. I think it's pretty sure it was in Miami. And
yeah, it was.
I knew that back then that he would make a good bodybuilder. Matter of fact, I told him, I said, you got legs. I said, I made him hit a few poses. And he, you know, he was laughing. And I think deep down he wanted to be a bodybuilder, but he was just really starting. So he didn't have a lot of muscle at that point. He had enough for men's physique, obviously, because he won the show. But I knew he could definitely move up if he wanted to. And so little by little, progressively over the years, he's added the muscle. Last year he made the switch. He placed third at New York Pro, and then this year he comes in, or in Tampa, excuse me, and then he came in and he won this year in New York Pro. So, I mean, he's shut up a lot of people, you know, because he talks very brash on his Facebook. He's very positive about what he feels he can achieve. Some people love it, some people hate it. He's got a lot of followers on social media, so they must like what they're seeing. And he produced, and it's always good when you can run your mouth and actually produce. I think of Andre Ferguson when I think about that. Andre's super confident in himself and his abilities, and he seems to deliver almost every single time. So how could you doubt the guy?
But he did make it clear, Dave, that, yeah, he is confident in his abilities, but, you know, responding in terms of the chatter on social media about him comparing himself to any one particular individual, Chris Bumstead, yeah, he never really went out on that limb. He's not looking to make this a me against them. He's looking to bring his best. And I think it was a good job on his part, especially right now, Dave, with so much going on right now in terms of the positivity, the negativity of bodybuilding social media. I think he made a very good point in terms of, you know, channeling out, I guess, whatever negativity there is and just, you know, focusing on bringing his very best.
he didn't say I could beat Bumstead and that like Bumstead sucks. He said that I feel that I am worthy of standing next to him on stage. I'd like to be compared. I think I can stack up against him. If you don't believe that you can do that, you shouldn't even be in the sport, right? I mean, so that's just confidence. He didn't say I'm going to beat Bumstead at the Olympia, you know. So people like to misconstrue and twist what you say because, you know, they're bored at home. I wish I had so much time at home that I was so bored that I could stir up controversies on Facebook and Instagram. I don't even have time to argue with these people. Even if, you know, if I had free time, maybe I would be on there arguing more like Milos does and all those guys. But I'm so busy. I barely have enough time to answer my emails at night till 3 in the morning. So what I recommend that people do is get another hobby or get yourself preoccupied with something else so you don't spend all day on most social media. Because when you're bored and you're home and you're dieting and you're hungry, you sit around and you read all the posts and your friends send you, hey, did you see what so-and-so said about you? Did you see it? That's usually what I get said. That's how I find out about everything. I don't see it myself. So, but the thing is, you got to block it out. I see people bragging about stuff that they're doing and buying and I laugh. I'm like, why would, I don't even want to it's silly to compare yourself to other people because you're not other people. You achieve and do what you want to bring yourself pleasure. If you're going to be obsessed with what other people are doing, then you're never going to accomplish anything yourself. And I think Logan realizes that, and it was a very insightful thing for him to say. And when you watch the interview, you'll see he gave some good insights. Iain Valliere, on the other hand, seems to be very concerned with what people are saying about him, as if like he needs their validation to justify his win. The only validation he needed, and I just did a rant on this, is the judges' validation, and they gave it to him. He got the win. Move on. You're the champ. Go to the Olympia.
On that note, let's go to the questions. The first 2 questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience. I have a couple of carb-related questions. First one, Dave, on your cyclical diet, the days with carbs, you eat 3 meals with carbs and 2 shakes with no carbs, protein, and peanut butter. Why don't you spread the carbs in the 6 meals?
You know what? Because I don't like, it's hard to put, you know, my shakes are usually like whey isolate with like an almond butter or peanut butter. I don't want to put like simple sugars like bananas in there or anything like that. So to me, I'd rather keep those shakes without the carbs. I don't like to give carbs right before bed when I'm dieting people. And so I put them in the other 3 meals. So I usually do 2 shakes, 3 meals, and then another food meal before bed, but with just high, you know, with vegetables essentially and protein. So that, you know, sometimes the protein source might be a little fattier, salmon, fish, you know, red meat. But there's no reason to really have, you know, carbs before bed when you're dieting. Plus, you know what, when you keep carbs lower before bed, you tend to have a better growth hormone release at night. So that's how I set it up. I don't give a lot of carbs usually unless the person happens to be a complete genetic freak. I have guys right now I'm working with, they're on protein, fat, and they're eating 50 grams of carbs 6 times a day because their metabolism is that fast. But not many people fit that category. So when you read my templates that people pass around, that my diet, you know, suggestions, it's just that. It's for the average person, you know, and everyone is a little different. And that's why where coaching comes in, because you have to tweak it according to the person you're working with. I'm working with a girl now, she's 6'2", okay? And she's, you know, she's a bikini competitor and she's crazy super lean. I had to give her a lot more food to eat because her metabolism is nuts. So you gotta cater your meal choices to who you're working with, you know? How much they weigh, what class they're competing in, you know, how lean are they or how lean do they need to get? And these are all variables that you will assess according to the person you're working with.
Second question again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, what's the minimum amount of carbs per day before change to a no carbs or keto diet?
You know, it's a tough call because what I usually do is I go by how my people are feeling. So let's say I'm doing 2 days in a row with no carbs and then I'm doing 1 day with carbs and they're pretty low and the person's like dragging ass and they're like, they have no energy and they feel like they're dying basically, which that doesn't mean they're really dying. It means that their brain is starving for fuel. And we're giving them every couple of days, we're throwing a little bit of carbs in there so they're never going into ketosis. In that situation, you're better off pulling all the carbs out because what will happen is the brain will switch into ketosis and then they'll go from feeling terrible to feeling better. So you're actually removing carbs and they actually feel better because now the brain can use fat as a fuel source because we're not teasing it with carbs. Because if you keep giving it carbs every couple of days, it never goes into a true state of ketosis. So in those situations where they're really hurting, I pull them out because it doesn't pay to keep them in anymore. For people who are doing fine and they like, oh, I feel great. I love my carb day, but I also like my no fat. I like my no carb days too. I don't mind it. I keep that in because it's working. So you have to kind of go by how the person's responding.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not following us on Instagram, it's official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us for the first time on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button below. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button. Obviously, if you comment, that helps us a lot too. As always, we appreciate all your support. Let's go to E. Gascarla. Dave, what do you think about doing crazy amounts of reps, sets of pull-ups and push-ups several days a week like David Goggins does? I know he doesn't have a bodybuilding type of body, but obviously he's very fit.
If you ever sat and talked to David Goggins, I actually heard him give a speech at the International Sports Hall of Fame, Bob Goldman's event. This guy, I thought that I was a neurotic, and when I was running, I thought I would get up in the morning. I would drink like a liter of water. I would go out for a run. I'd come back. This is over the summer. This is not while I was in school. School, I had a different thing, a different regimen. But I'm giving you when I was home for the summer, then I would get up, and then I would go to the local pool. They had an Olympic-sized pool by my house. I would lay in the sun for like maybe an hour and fall asleep because I was exhausted. I would go, and I would then swim for a half mile. So I don't know how many laps it was on the Olympic pool, back and forth, back and forth. I would go home after that. I would eat like almost nothing, like just like a little carb meal, and then I would go out and bike ride. I don't know why I was doing like triathlon training. Then I would come home and I would do 1,000 sit-ups, okay? And I usually did 100 push-ups every day. And this routine was so taxing to my mind because it took so long to do all this. It was the whole day, basically. And I was under-eating tremendously, thinking I was getting in better shape for, cross-country when I went back to school. And, I looked ripped to the bone. I was skinny, because I didn't want to be too big because, distance runners need to be thin. People probably looked at me and said, oh, look at what he's doing. He looks great. But you know what? It was non-sustainable, and I had a good metabolism anyway, and I was starving myself. So it's not realistic to look at what David Goggins does. I mean, he wakes up every morning, he's like, how can I torture myself more than I tortured myself the day before? That's not for the normal people to consider doing. So I would not be doing 1,000 push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups every single day. You're going to overtrain yourself. You're probably going to get hurt. You're not going to make gains in the gym. It's not a smart thing to do. Now, having said that, if you're going training for, to enter the Navy SEALs, that might be some good training to do because you need to do it. But you always have to ask yourself, what am I getting in shape for? I have people come to me and they're like, I'm doing a Stairmaster at level 165, for 2 hours a day. I said, well, are you training for like some kind of like for Ninja Warrior? I mean, what are you training for? No, I want to just lose body fat. I said, well, you're doing cardiovascular training like as if you want to get your heart in shape. I said, if you want to just lose body fat, then you got to do low intensity cardio. And I change around this stuff, and of course they get better results. So you have to figure out what you're doing. Why are you exercising? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to get in cardiovascular shape? You're trying to get in, just look good cosmetically? You have to define your goals, and then you can define what you need to do to achieve those goals.
Let's go to Big Cherry Fit. Every time I have blood work done, my doctor said my kidneys' blood levels are elevated because of my high protein consumption. She's always telling me to not eat so much protein. I'm really not eating that much, roughly 230-ish grams a day. Should I be concerned about this, which have been my results consistently for the past 5 years?
Look, I don't know. You didn't give me numbers. There's 2 kidney function values on blood work that kind of give you an assessment of how your kidney health is. One is called BUN, or blood urea nitrogen, and one is called creatinine, not creatine, creatinine, the waste product. Okay, and these are waste. Blood urea nitrogen is just that. It's the amount of nitrogen in your blood from protein breakdown. Okay. That number can be skewed by how dehydrated you are. So if you're a little dehydrated, that'll go up, which is usually what happens because they make you take these blood tests in the morning on fasting. So you get dehydrated overnight. You go to sometimes you don't give blood until noon. Of course you're dehydrated. So sometimes that can be elevated. That's not as important. When creatinine, however, is elevated, that could imply that the kidneys are not doing their job and they're not filtering properly. And then you got to figure out why. Do you have high blood pressure? Are you a little toxic because you just got off a show? You were on a lot of anabolics and you were on an enormous amount of protein and you were overworking your body because you were doing 2 hours of cardio a day. In that case, what I would do is I back people down. All right, let's clean you out. Let's put you on my 3-week detox that I offer. If you email me at huge285@aol.com, I'll send it to you for free. Follow the regimen, clean your body out, give the kidneys a break, the liver a break, let them restore themselves and regenerate. That's typical. But if you're walking around with high creatinine, all the time, that's not a good thing because that could indicate that you have progressive kidney damage. Now, you can go for another test, and I've said this here before, called cystatin C. Now, these doctors don't know what it is, a lot of them, unless they're like nephrologists or hematologists. So they a lot of times dismiss it, but it's the most definitive test for kidney damage. So if your cystatin C levels are high, you probably have some kind of kidney damage going on. If they're not, then you're probably pretty good, even though you might have high creatinine. So that's a good backup test to take before they kind of stick a needle into your kidney and do a biopsy, which you really don't want to have done, unless you really have some serious damage and your creatinine is through the roof. It sounds like yours is mildly high. Why it's mildly high, I don't know, but I would definitely consider doing my 3-week detox and then getting retested maybe a month or two later to see if it comes down a little bit, just to give your body a break. Look, the organs can only take so much, the organs of digestion, of which the kidney and liver fit in there, can only take so much abuse, You got to give it a break every once in a while from all that food, especially if you're on the older side. Like young guys can get away with it. If you're in your 40s and 50s and you're bodybuilding and you're pounding your body with tons of protein and you're breaking down a lot of muscle in the gym, which also makes your kidneys have to break that, deaminate the liver and the kidneys deaminate all that protein. You got to give your body a break every once in a while, at least once a year. And it's a good idea to do this 3-week detox. It kind of lower protein intake. You're giving your body the supplements that help detox the organs. And you're fasting for 12 hours a day, and it just gives your body the ability to regenerate, because the body has a tremendous ability to regenerate, regrow organs, but you have to give it the break in order to do that. If you don't, what happens is these organs become fibrotic and they get scar tissue buildup, and then there's nothing you can do about it.
Interesting and I think relevant question. Again, we teased at the top of the broadcast a rant you just did, sort of in response to sort of the back and forth that's been taking place on social media. And for full, disclosure, obviously there was a lot of conversation generated from Iain winning the New York Pro. Milos Sarcev, apparently the story goes, posted a thumbnail that Nick Strength and Power used for one of their videos comparing Iain and I believe Max Charles. Obviously there was a huge conversation, and look, when you get into the bodybuilding social media aspect, there is a lot of negativity. There's a lot of, he said, she said. But the question, and it is a good one, from Stallaciousness, do you believe bodybuilding is harder in today's era because of social media and the pressures caused by it? And he specifically cites Iain at the Tampa Pro.
It's harder for people who are mentally not that strong. It's no harder on stage. It's the same judges. They're judging the same criteria. You come in shape. You do the work in the gym in the off season, you put the muscle on, you get rewarded for it. Whether you can handle the social media backlash on whether you win, lose, or they think you should have won or should have lost, that's up to you. I always got, the great thing was I wasn't in the social media era, but I had a lot of people who were, basically supporting me because I got screwed a lot of times. People love to support the underdog, and then when you do well, then they want to, they want you to crash and burn. But even to this day, I still have people who criticize my physique. Like I really give a crap. I don't even compete anymore. Who cares? I am not my body. I am who I am creatively as a human being. And so the good opinion of others doesn't matter to me. But a lot of people it does affect, and they can't handle it. And so for people like that, you're almost better off getting off social media. People made fun of Iain for getting rid of his social media. But you know what? He should just stay off there. He should just hire someone else to put the pictures up. Because if it's going to mess his head up, especially getting ready for shows like the Olympia, I would never go on there. He should never be on there. He should be taking pictures and giving them to, should hire a guy to do his social media for him, or let his wife, Melissa, do it for him. And just give her the pictures and the videos he shoots in the gym, let her put it up, never go on social media. Not until after the Olympia. That would be my advice to him, because you know what? It does affect him. He might be an emotionally sensitive guy and it affects him. Flex Wheeler admitted it himself. He goes, I'm very sensitive. And everything that people say affects him emotionally. And that's how Sean Ray used to get under his skin back in the day. He knew how to push Flex's buttons. Other guys are like machines. You think Dorian Yates cared about what anyone said about his physique, or Jay Cutler? It might have actually motivated him to train harder. So there's different personalities. And so for the personality who is emotionally sensitive and gets upset when people don't love them, you know, God forbid someone doesn't love you, but that's, you know, there are people like that, then they should just stay off social media, especially when it's a very, you know, important time in their diet prep for a specific show. In the off season, it's not such a big deal because you don't care, because you're not dieting, you're not irritable, you can handle it more. Some people can handle the pressures all the time, some people can't. My suggestion is if it bothers you what people think about you, don't go on YouTube, don't go on your Instagram or Facebook, let someone else post your stuff.
Let's go to Bilal Hamide. Dave, absolutely love the show. I noticed that whenever I finish my cycle and go off during PCT, I look way more shredded and veinier, yet less full. Diet is the same. How can one keep that conditioning while on cycle?
Yeah. You know, it's the old story. Whenever I was off, and I would tell people I'm off. They're like, yeah, you're on a ton of stuff now. Because I would come off, and that first 3 to 4 weeks I was off, I lost all that fluid that I would retain, you know, my face and my body from the GH, from the steroids. But I still had all the muscle, and I was always lean, so I actually looked freakier harder. Now, to me, I felt I was smaller because I wasn't as pumped up, but to the average gym guy, I looked ridiculous, you know. And people said, "This guy's got to be on more stuff now," and that wasn't the truth. So, yeah, when you come off the drugs, you do lose a lot of that water, just walking around water. You know what I mean? So you can look good. Eventually, the longer you're off, eventually what happens is you start to deflate, because you got to remember red blood cell volume. Okay. You produce new red blood cells every 120 days. So what's 120 days? Was that 4 months? So let's say you get mid-cycle. So most of the red blood cells in your body are probably at the halfway mark. So after a month or two, usually when you get to that 6 to 8 week mark, you start to get smaller and deflate, and your pumps are not good in the gym anymore. And that's because you're losing off all those extra red blood cells you produce while you're on steroids. So that's one of the deflation things. You're not storing glycogen as well anymore. The fact that you're low testosterone probably at this point, because your body never really kicks itself back on after a heavy cycle, not at least initially. You're going to feel a little weaker. You maybe not feel as mentally sure of yourself. So, but that takes a while to happen. Right after you stop the cycle, that first 2 weeks, and you'll start losing all the water, you look amazing. And so, can you duplicate that while on cycle? Not really. You wouldn't want to be walking around on diuretics, because being dehydrated is very catabolic to the muscle. So you're not going to grow well if you're walking around in a dehydrated state. I knew a bodybuilder, he was a freak about water retention. He would take diuretics all the time, every single day, and he wound up giving himself kidney problems. So remember, the kidneys have to flush all this waste out. They need to be well hydrated to do that. They don't want to do that. You do that, try to force waste to the kidneys in a dehydrated state, it damages them. So don't get caught up in that either.
Let's go to Phil Francis PT. Dave, your opinion on using aromatase inhibitors for a long time. Will they affect your health over time, especially if you depend on them while being on TRT due to being estrogen sensitive? And then I guess the second to that is, what other options are there?
I tell people, if you're on a post-cycle therapy or hormone replacement, I don't think an aromatase inhibitor is necessarily necessary. I put people on Testalize, my species nutrition product, because it'll lower estrogen without bottoming it out. It'll lower DHT levels without bottoming it out, and in doing so, it'll raise natural testosterone levels. Even if you're on HRT, it'll also balance those hormones in favor of testosterone and to the disfavor of DHT and estrogen, but it won't annihilate them. That's the problem. See, the aromatase inhibitors are strong, so when you're on only like 100 to 200 milligrams of testosterone a week, or even less when you're taking PCT and you're doing HCG, Clomid, sometimes it's too much, the aromatase inhibitor, and you actually lower estrogen too much, you lose that androgen receptor sensitivity, you lose your sex drive, and you just don't feel well. And it's probably not good for you. Now, I've done shows where I've had people on and they talked about how terrible these aromatase inhibitors are. I'm not buying that they're doing, wreaking havoc on people like some people say they are, or claim they are. Are some people more susceptible to the aromatase inhibitors where they're going to have negative, ramifications? Yeah, I'm sure. Just like anyone. So a lot of people, there are people out there that are probably sensitive to almost every drug on the market, but the majority of the people are not. So when we're talking about the masses of people, most people could take aromatase inhibitors as long as they're not overdoing it with no negative side effects. If you're doing 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week, you certainly need an aromatase inhibitor. If you're doing TRT, though, I would stick to Testalize. Initially, if that does the job, you're good to go. If you're still having ridiculously high estrogen indicated and verified by blood work and symptoms, then you might consider taking like a half an Arimidex, half a milligram, 1 or 2 times a week. But I don't think it's necessary.
Time for a couple of more questions. Let's go to Seba Everywhere. When would you weigh meat? Before cooking or after? Sometimes chicken gives water or beef lets some fat go.
Yeah, I would weigh it after. I always say weigh everything cooked. Now, when you're measuring carbohydrates, a lot of times, you have to go by what the rice box says. So if you buy minute rice and you look at the box and you read, all right, 1 serving is this many grams and it produces this many grams of carbohydrates. Okay, so you read it. So if you're measuring it dry, you're measuring a half a cup out, it produces so much. I don't know. Every box of rice is different. That's why you got to read the box. That is usually measured dry, because if you're measuring it, if cooked, rice can fluff up depending on how much extra water or less water you use on it. I like my rice a little harder, so I put less water in it. So I would probably have more carbs in mine. So you have to really always measure the carbs dry and then the protein cooked.
Let's go to IFBB Tenacity. I always get ab muscle cramps when doing seated muscle ab crunches. No other ab exercises cause this for me. Is this an issue of electrolyte imbalance or other causes? I work them about 2 to 3 times a week.
He's getting them when he's doing what against it? Sorry.
Seated machine ab crunches.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times guys cramp, especially in the summer, because they're really depleted of electrolytes. And when I say electrolytes, 99% of the time it's sodium depletion. I used to, for some reason, I went through a stage where I was getting really bad cramps in my hamstrings. So I would do my squat workout, I would do my leg press or hack squat, I do extensions, then I get the hamstring curls and I'd be getting these lockups on my hamstrings, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I started drinking a Gatorade or coconut water with my workouts, and it solved the problem. So I don't know. I think it was a sodium depletion issue. Maybe because I was sweating so much while I was doing legs. That's usually the case. So try doing something that has electrolytes. If you're not dieting, you can do like coconut water or Gatorade. If you are dieting, you could try to maybe do like a Powerade Zero or something like that has no calories in it but still has the electrolytes in it. That might be a good option.
Last question about someone that believe it or not, we actually get a lot of questions. So once in a while, so on Instagram, right, you have your general inbox and then you have your other inbox where I guess people that you're not necessarily connected to, you're going to get a lot of messages. Sometimes I'll just check there, just see, all right, what kind of questions are we getting? We get so many questions about this guy, Zack King Khan. Yes. It's a massive fascination with him. Are you still working with Zack? What exactly are his competition plans? You should get him on the show.
I am working with Zack. I've been working with him over a year now. The guy is an absolute freak. I'll tell you this. First of all, I got to tell you, he's got a tremendous work ethic. The guy works his butt off. Anything I tell him to do, he does. He's a machine. He's so big right now. I dieted him down when he was going to do shows. But as you know, in the UK, it's almost impossible to compete anywhere. They can't travel. It was a nightmare. He was in shape. I had him in contest shape for about 2 months straight. We were looking for shows for him to do. He just couldn't do it. I got him working, with Chris Cormier on his posing. Him and Chris are like friends now. Because his posing was terrible. And now he's working on that. His presentation's really good. We're gonna roll him out in 2021, and he's gonna, I think, surprise a lot of people. He made a lot of improvements to his physique. He's been focused. He sends me updates twice a week. I make sure he's in check. He's like I said, he's very methodical. He eats his food. He does everything he's supposed to do, and he's getting better and better, which is amazing. It's incredible. The guy tore both quads and had to have him reattached twice because they made a mistake the first time, and his quads look really good still. So I mean, he's, like I said, when you have genetics, it's a wonderful thing. He's got a lot of muscle on his body. Once again, his biggest problem was he couldn't control the muscle he had. It was almost like a Paul Dillette issue. So I really, had him working hard with, and he's still working with Chris Cormier on that via Skype. So between Chris and I think we're going to have him tweaked out and perfect, ready to roll in 2021. And look, he has never done anything on a pro level. He was a very popular amateur. He's probably the most popular guy when you go to expos and you see him sitting in a booth because he's an absolute freak of nature. But I can't wait to get him on stage because the trick would be if we can get him to place, top 5, top 6 at a pro show. I think that would be a huge feather in his cap because a lot of people thought he was not capable of that. But I'm telling you, when you work hard and you got genetics, you could accomplish anything.
Before we go, Dave, it's amazing to think right now, today is September 9th. This weekend, barring, obviously everything's gone on over the last 6-7 months. This weekend, if I'm not mistaken, would have been Olympia weekend.
Yeah, instead it's the Cal Pro now. Right?
Amazing to think right now we be in the midst of our preview coverage of our road to the Olympia interviews and everything that goes along with Olympia coverage. But obviously it's been a crazy time. It's been a crazy year. And the hope is that, everything winds down smoothly and we do have an exciting Olympia, which is shaping up to be. But it's been an exciting last couple of weeks. Obviously the New York Pro absolutely delivering, Tampa Pro absolutely delivering, and more in store for this upcoming bodybuilding year. By the time you watch this interview, this show, the interview with Logan Franklin is going to be live on RxMuscle.com and the RxMuscle YouTube channel. Classic Physique Champ of the New York Pro on with Dave on Live With. For Dave Palumbo and our producer Tyler Shore, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.